There may be a tape.
I think there is.
Oh, really? She said it was December.
Yeah.
Somebody got a letter. You want the letter? I got the letter. That's not the letter? Oh.
Scheduled to be introduced to the county legislature November 15.
Oh, okay. All right, there was different. So you said, can't legislature.
They're introducing the 15.
Yeah.
Do some research, do it on the 10th. We ready? All right. So let's bring the Thursday, November 3rd, Webster Town Board meeting to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dolly, can you do roll call, please?
Supervisor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilman Abbott.
Here.
Councilwoman Cataldi. Present. Councilman Cahill.
Here.
Councilwoman Wynn. Here. County Attorney Genesi.
Present.
Well, I'm very excited about our first agenda item tonight. We have a presentation by Ray Connor, the Director of Personnel for the Town of Webster, on the employee handbook update. So I'm going to hand it to
All right, thank you. Joining me tonight is Senior Personnel Clerk Kelsey Feeney. Kelsey has joined us from the town of Greece and will be taking over payroll responsibilities on Carol Capitello's retirement in January. Kelsey was also our project manager on this review. So our presentation tonight has 4 components. Background, we're going to talk about the history, purpose, and certain disclaimers with the employee handbook. We're going to talk about the process that we went through to complete this. We retained an HR consultant, we researched and reviewed drafts, and designated Kelsey as our project manager, collaborative department heads, and multiple drafts for quality review. Then we're going to actually review with you all the changes, proposed changes to the employee handbook, and then talk about the next steps of what will happen after tonight. So, history. We were able to locate the oldest version of the employee handbook from 1994. The current version that we are using was adopted by the town board in 2007. I think it goes without saying that many laws and procedures have changed in the past 15 years. There were attempts made in 2013, 2015, and 2019 to update the employee handbook, but none of those attempts have made it to the town board for your consideration or adoption. We're hoping to change that in 2022 and turn that yellow circle into a nice green circle. So, what's the purpose? The purpose of an employee handbook is to establish rules and policies for all employees of the town. It is to be read in conjunction with union contracts for those employees who are in the union. So unless expressly excluded therein, the employee handbook is applicable to all employees except when in conflict with an expressed or explicit provision of a collective bargaining agreement, police general order, or Webster Public Library Board of Trustee adopted policy, in which case the latter shall supersede. In general, a good employee handbook ensures that rules and policies are accurate and up to date, that they're known by all, managers, employees, and the officials of the town. They're clear and understood, consistently and fairly applied, and documented for compliance purposes. So some disclaimers. The employee handbook is not a contract of employment, express or implied. It should not be construed as such. Unless otherwise specified, the handbook supersedes and replaces any and all previous personnel policies, manuals, guidelines, or related resolutions issued by the town. The town board reserves the right to interpret, change, modify, or eliminate any provision contained in the handbook. And in the event a federal or state statute or a town law or ordinance should conflict with any provision contained in the handbook, the statute, law, or ordinance will prevail. So, what do we do on the process? We started in June of this year, and we retained a firm called Public Sector HR Consultants. They had built our 2007 version of the employee handbook and were involved in other draft updates. They work exclusively with municipalities in New York and are used by many area towns and counties. We designated project manager. We reviewed all prior drafts, looking at 13, 15, and 19 drafts. We researched samples from other towns. We developed areas of focus for the consultant to provide us with maybe some best practices that they've seen. We went through multiple drafts, we followed up on changes, and we did a quality assurance review for typographical errors and language agreements. We engaged our department heads on specific policy questions to make sure that we could compare our current practices versus the 2007 handbook. And in some areas, we looked to them for their expertise. So for instance, IT policies. We worked extensively with the IT department to make sure that the employee handbook policies were in line there, and certain finance policies, and worked with others to discuss tools and vehicles and such. We briefed the supervisor and finance director on the process. We've made notification to department heads so they would know about tonight's meeting, as well as notification to all union presidents so that they would know about our intention here, and we're presenting to the town board. So, overall, there are around 150 changes to the employee handbook, 10 new policies, 25 policies have been updated. So the main category of changes are new policies, updated policies for legal compliance, and then best practice recommendations. And we'll go through each of those three sections here. So for our new policies, background investigations, this was a formalization of our current practices. We do run background checks on new hires, but there was not a written policy, so now there is. Employment of relatives. This is something that was identified in prior drafts but never adopted, and this sets down rules that avoid supervisory situations that can cause conflict of interest, but also recognizes that people can be hired off of civil service lists, and there can be a history, a family tradition of service. So the example I point to is that sometimes law enforcement can be a family tradition, fire departments, other forms of service. So it does have provisions for that. Nepotism, basically it makes clear that using your position to favor a family member is misconduct. Additional new policies on the use of communication systems and equipment, social media, and bring your own device. Basically, in the last 15 years, the area of IT has grown as to what are the technology tools that we're using, and this brings in some policies that were sorely needed. New policy on leave for blood donation and time off to vote. These are New York State laws. The town has been complying with them. We've always been in compliance with them, but we did not have them in our policy handbook, and so we're doing that. A press policy. Basically, this clarifies that employees should not be speaking directly to the press. They should be notifying the department heads. The department heads should be informing the town's supervisor so that there can be consistent information and accurate information given to the public, and so that the people who need to know the information and the concerns of the public can get it directly And then finally, whistleblower law is in compliance with section 75B of civil service law. This is something the town has complied with, but did not have in its employee handbook. So our next section is updates for legal compliance. Kelsey, would you like to talk about that section of the work?
Yep, so the first update that we made was in regards to gifts, receiving gifts. So the limit was previously set at $25 and it increased to $75 due to inflation. The second update deals with New York State law grants for nursing mothers. This law mandates that us as employers give those individuals, employees at work who are breastfeeding the ability to do so at work, gives them special time periods to do it, as well as certain places to do it, such as, we can't step into the bathroom to do that. The third policy, so currently the employee handbook states that town employees can use town equipment and tools for their own personal use. Brayton and I would like to eliminate this policy as it is unethical and leads to unconstitutional gifts of funds. The next update deals with military leave laws, and these were updated due to federal and state law requirement changes. The next update dealt with New York State cancer screening laws. This law mandates that us as employers give the employees the ability to take up to 4 hours per calendar year of cancer screening leave if they choose to do so. The FMLA policy update was just updated to new federal requirements. Most of these changes had to do with military caregivers. The COBRA policy update was updated due to New York State regulations. The EEO policy and the ADA policy were updated due to new federal law requirements. And last but not least, the non-discrimination policy was also updated to comply with new New York State law requirements. And then our next section is about our best practice recommendations, and Brayton's going to speak on those.
All right. So there's 2 slides on this, and they go basically in page order through the handbook. We included a definition of benefited part-time employees. The town has had a history of providing some benefits for certain part-timers, but it was kind of a conglomeration of inconsistent practices and some conflicting board resolutions. So that is now defined in here and is consistent with the direction that we issued earlier this year to managers. All right, so the next is that we are putting in the handbook that for new hires that they should receive a performance evaluation at 6 months. We consider that to be a best practice. That is not tied to salary progression, so there's not a cost element to that, but it is forcing and reminding managers that it's really important to have those performance conversations with new hires relatively early in the process and not wait until the 364th day. We incorporated existing finance department travel policy into the handbook. That's a separate policy that exists, and so now it's incorporated into the handbook. We did some updates around the vehicle use. So for instance, there's a chart in the handbook of vehicle assignments, and it was out of date with regard to employee job titles and which employees had 24-hour use, which employees had commuter use or pool use. And we've also reviewed what the appropriate tax treatment is for that. And so when this is adopted and coming into the new year, we'll be adjusting tax treatment to be consistent with IRS requirements. We also simplified the language around vehicle use. There were some vehicles that could be driven in contiguous counties and some that could not. And it was based on job title, not based upon the assignment of the vehicle. And so we thought it made sense to simplify that. Kind of continuing along in the vehicle section, we included insurability standards within the document. So it talks about vehicle assignment based on driving record, was reviewed at DWI in the last 3 years. We're not going to assign a vehicle to you, for instance. And also, it formalized something that we've been doing for a long time, which is we use the New York State DMV lens system for all people who are assigned vehicles for the town. And that notifies us if they have a reportable incident so that we can check their license status. But that was not contained in any of the written policies, so it is to be added here. Let's see, updating our policy to clarify compensatory time for FLSA non-exempts. So compensatory time for people who can earn overtime under the Fair Labor Standards Act is contained in the union contracts, but for any non-union employees who are hourly versus salaried, this gives them the option to choose time off instead of causing an additional expense to the town in overtime. There's a section of the employee handbook, section 800, that says basically for department heads which union contract they derive their benefits from. Okay? And so there was a mishmash of some department heads were drawn from blue collar and some from white collar, and our practice in doing our hiring over the last number of years, there's some inconsistency in benefit treatment, and so we're proposing that all department heads follow the white collar contract with the exception of the chief and the captain, because of the really uniqueness of pay practices and benefit practices around law enforcement. So that's our recommendation there. The last one on this slide is clarifying the holiday treatment for benefited part-timers. It goes back to my earlier conversation about part-time benefits not being well defined. This defines them. Next slide, we are making a recommendation around an existing paragraph called credit for prior service. And so the point of this change is to recognize the value of prior service at other municipalities. Quite a few of the folks that we've hired recently, we hired them because they had experience at other municipalities, and that was valuable to us. And so we want to basically be able to treat them as an experienced employee instead of as a brand new employee. And so we would like some consistency with that. That's the recommendation there. Clarifying vacation treatment of benefited part-timers. That's another aspect of clarifying the benefit of part-timers. Health insurance, the recommendations on health insurance. The health insurance policy had not been updated since before the passage of Obamacare, and there were still contingencies in there for insurance for part-time employees, which we don't do. And so that all those references are removed, and also this board has has said that part-time elected officials, other than some grandfathered folks, don't receive health insurance, and so that's been cleaned out in the draft. And then there were certain grandfathering language that applied solely to some old town supervisors that's no longer needed, and so that's cleared out as well. One of the more substantial changes in the employee handbook has to do with short-term disability. So since the time the handbook was adopted, the town has opted out of New York State statutory short-term disability. We did that about 10 years ago. Instead, the town self-funds for a disability benefit, but the employee handbook didn't define what that benefit was because it was written when we were under the statutory benefit. So we've proposed a level in there for part-timers to basically follow the statutory, and then for full-timers, we're proposing that they have access to half-pay sick leave, which is a very common disability replacement benefit for municipalities in New York. I would point out that for our unionized employees, our white collar and blue collar, that they have access to a sick bank, which allows them to receive full pay for that time period. And currently, our full-time non-union employees will be limited to $170 a week. And so the proposal is to allow them to have half pay sick leave for up to 6 months. So as we close out here, the town has long had a fitness center membership benefit for employees, but it was never incorporated into the handbook, so that benefit is incorporated into the handbook. And we are also, around drug-free workplace, we're incorporating our existing pre-employment drug testing practices into the handbook, but also making an important modification along our with regard to marijuana use. Right? So drug-free workplace policies have historically said that you cannot use any illegal drug while at work or on work premises or with work equipment. In New York State, marijuana is legal, but employers can set their own rules with regard to workplace use. And so this clarifies what we had when the law passed, we set instructions to employees that, you know, what they do on their time is their business, but they can't do it on our time. They can't impact their performance on our time. They can't do it on our property. They can't do it with our equipment. This codifies that. And I would just say that anyone who has a CDL license and operates large equipment, they have always and continue to be covered by federal rules, and marijuana use is not allowed for them, so the public can be comfortable that folks who are operating our CDL-based equipment you know, are subject to random drug testing and are not allowed to use marijuana. So, the board members, you've been provided with a track change version of the 150-page employee handbook, because you know, the devil can be in the details, and there's a bug. Okay, so all right. So next steps. So tonight we briefed the town board. Next week I'll prepare a final draft based on the input from board members or department heads, or you know, typos or something we find. And then I'll distribute a final draft a week from Monday for the anticipated adoption by the board on November 17th. We would then engage in an extensive education program to make sure that all employees receive a copy of it and understand the main highlights of what's different within it. And then, you know, as laws change, we won't wait another 15 years to bring you edits and ask for your adoption of new versions of the handbook. So, any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
It goes back to the second or third slide that you showed. First of all, I want to thank both you and Kelsey for the tremendous amount of work that's gone into this project. Kelsey, welcome.
Thank you.
Quite a project for your
Yeah.
first few months here. And with all that hard work, one of the things under the background disclaimers was the town board reserves the right to interpret, change, modify, or eliminate any provision contained in the handbook.
Yes.
Can I assume that there's a process for that so that it doesn't become a capricious change?
So that language exists in the 2007 handbook, and it's essentially preserves for all future town boards their authority as voice of the voter to set town policy, right? So that someone can't argue that, well, you set the policy in 2007, so therefore you can never change it, all right? And it also provides management the opportunity to apply policies in ways that are fair and make sense as times change. You know, so it just is an ultimate recognition that the town board has the authority to set these policies by a vote of the town board.
So it would require a vote of the town.
To adopt policies, yes.
Thank you.
Any?
Thank you.
No?
There's a lot of cross-outs and a lot of additions, and I'd like to read through it.
And actually, I know we usually do, we don't do presentations usually at regular town board meetings, but Braden had said that based on the timeline, especially the training in December, to have this hit the ground running in January, as you saw in that last slide, it made sense to have it today so that we could adopt it hopefully by 2 weeks from tonight. All right. Well, thanks, Kelsey and Braden.
Thank you.
All right. All right, our next item tonight is the open to the floor with each speaker being allowed up to 5 minutes to talk. I did not grab the sign-in sheet, so, but I can do what I did the last couple of times, to just kind of meander and break to my right to left. People out in the crowd, they're left to right. Sarah, would you like to take the podium? Oh, and that worked. Sarah's number 1 on the list.
Hello, I'm Sarah Castronova, reside at 1629 Ridge Road. We're one of the last farms left in Webster, and my concern is removing open space terminology from the code. There are other properties in Webster that have been in open space programs. Some of the programs are defunct and some are not, and I think removing any of the language regarding any of these properties is a bad idea, unless we put in something else. Strivers that are near us had the easement open space project done with their property, and it wouldn't be defined if we remove a lot of the topics. That's it for me.
Thanks, Sarah. I think Gail, you're next.
She wants me to go first. I'm going to add on to Diane.
Oh, that's wonderful. Diana, jump in.
Okay. Yeah, so, hi everyone, hi. Yeah, so I guess you guys probably all got our letter number 2. We emailed it. I do have 1 copy, but my printer was being really slow, so you can have my copy when I'm done with this. But yeah, basically our standpoint is just reiterating kind of our position from the last meeting that we had about this. But really, it's just, especially with the 2 public input sessions for the comp plan coming up, I just think that the section of the code that deals with this, currently expired open space program needs to be treated a little bit differently than just any other sort of defunct, outdated item of code. It's not really the same. I think as Sarah was pointing out, it's important that it stays in the code until such time as we either update the terminology or get rid of it completely. And if this is just getting rid of it completely, I think with something like this, it really would be more, I think it's fairer to wait until after the public input period for the comp plan to take it out if it's going to come out. I think this is a question that needs to be put for the public in a wider sort of remit than what we have is just, whoever's brave enough to come and stand up at the podium of terror. So it's scary, and I'm a brave person.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She's right, it's intimidating.
It is intimidating, although I do have to say, I love that we went retro with the logo. I'm excited about this. I don't know, that's probably been there for like 8 years and I'm only just noticing it, but
That's
yeah.
so funny, she noticed the logo.
I
we
love
just
the
talked about
logo.
today, Josh.
I think my mom has a t-shirt from when she was a lifeguard back in the 70s with this logo on it, so, yeah, anyway. So yeah, back to topic. So our proposal basically is that in order to move forward with what you guys were, wanting to do with everything else in the code and, sort of pass the buck a little longer on this question of the open space program, you could just modify the resolution with an affixation to say, blah, 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 certain resolutions of the town of Webster and a municipal code to be designated code of the town of Webster, with the exception of chapter 220, which shall remain in the town code. Obviously for now, again, I just think it's it's a question that the public themselves deserve to be asked with the comp plan coming up. You know, I know there's mixed opinions on whether or not something like this is something that we want in our future, but again, it's such a big tool. And we've got currently like 500 acres that are currently protected by it, that if we don't renew it, I think it needs to be more of a debate, and a question that the public, you know, deserve to have some input into. So, that's my standpoint.
Thanks, Diane.
Okay.
So now, Gail, would you like? Okay.
My name is Gail Binder, and I live at 357 Golfview Heights. I still have 2 parcels of land in this, I'm going to call it the tax deferment open space plan. And at the last board meeting where this was discussed, it was said that the reason they kept the code, kept this in the code at the time that it was changed, when they set an expiration date and such for the program. They said they kept it because there were still parcels in the program and people needed to have the code to reference. Now, I have had need to reference the code in the recent past. I've been trying to donate some land to the town. I also have a piece of property that if my neighbors could purchase it, they desperately need a new septic system unless the septic goes through, the sewer goes through Woodard Road. So I think it should stay there, if only for people like myself who still have property in the plan. And also to support what Diana says, if you just completely eliminate the concept, it would be very difficult to give it rebirth. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. No, you're not signed in. It's Mr. Rock.
Betty.
Yes,
Eddie.
I didn't sign in because I think what these people said was sufficient.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, thanks, man. Then behind Betty is Gail, not Gail, Rebecca. Would you like to take the podium?
Sure. My name is Rebecca Collins, and I live at 608 Old Woods Road. And I really don't have anything to add. I just wanted to lend my voice in support of not removing this chapter on open space preservation. I like the idea of going ahead and approving everything else with the exception of this. I just think it sends the wrong message to completely remove it before the comprehensive plan has been approved.
Thanks. All right, is that Michelle back there?
It is.
Would you like to?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you can see, the bound copies of the study of deficits done by the New York Citizens Audit Group is only about 2 weeks old. And I have read it, and I need to read it again and again and again. It's comprehensive, and in intermittent bouts of being shocked and stunned, I put it down for a while and went back to it. So I'm sure that's probably what everybody will have to do. But I just have a brief statement to read. And I will say that if you have any questions at all, I've highlighted at the bottom left and bottom right corners of the front page the email addresses that you can reach out to members of the group through. With that said, New York Citizens Audit is a team of concerned citizen volunteers working to restore integrity to the Empire State. By gathering and analyzing publicly available voter data, we have uncovered shocking revelations about our rigged election system. Based on our findings, we are calling for the decertification of the entire New York State 2020 general election especially a minimum of 89 improperly certified New York State legislative races. We seek to include and involve all New York State citizens in asserting every legal remedy within the New York State and United States constitutions to rectify the egregious violations of law in the New York State 2020 general election, including, but not limited to, proceedings in the judicial, executive, and legislative branches. We must uphold our right under the law to free and fair elections, including but not limited to one lawful citizen, one registration, one vote, hand-counted paper ballots, and citizen involvement in conducting, controlling, managing, monitoring, and verifying every stage of the election process. This is the way to secure our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the path to restoring our truthful identity as a godly nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm looking forward to reading this.
It's really
Maybe I should
fascinating.
get a hobby, but I am looking forward to
Good.
reading this because that's very interesting.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
Yeah, I looked at it briefly, there's some pretty interesting information here, so I look forward to reading the detail also. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, I have a bean problem that I was, is it Cindy?
You know what, sorry, I didn't even understand the concept of it out there. I thought I had to sign it to come in. So I don't have a thing to say.
That's okay,
Okay.
and
Just hello.
you can always pass on that, we don't want anybody.
I have to.
Call it the podium terror?
Scary when you're up there. You guys have each other. You're just like one person over there.
I'm gonna do my best. My New Year's resolution will be to turn that into not the podium of terror, where people feel very comfortable.
We could put a little succulent up there. I think just like maybe a fern.
Oh, I will put a
attached
lei
to
over
light.
your neck when you go up and talk and get into Mai Tais. Anyway, I think that concludes the open to the mic section. So the next item up is the, well, last week's minutes. Dahlia, I looked at them and I think the October 27, 2022 board minutes are great. I make a motion that we approve them.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Catoli?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye.
Ginny, I think you were due to the bills, right?
Yes,
All right.
I have a chance to look at the bill, and they seem to be in order. I make a motion to pay them.
Second.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Catoli?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And I also looked at the, went over the prepaid warrants as submitted by the Director of Finance, and I make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott? Councilwoman Catoli?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Well, the next one, 5 resolutions are the Paul Adams Show, and I know, Paul, I'm very happy that you're back.
Thank you, Tom.
We missed you.
Glad to be back.
So,
Vacation was fun, though.
good, good. You could just give,
Yeah, the next 2 resolutions involve budget transfers and amendments. In regard to the transfers, just to hit the highlights, there is a $47,500 transfer to cover the settlement of a couple of judgments and claims. We had increased law enforcement fuel costs by $22,000. As you know, fuel costs are up. There was a reallocation of funds within the recreation line items to fund seasonal personnel to the extent of $58,000. The highway department recently purchased some salting equipment that required an additional $28,800 for that particular line item. And then also electricity costs are up, so there's some transfers in regard to that. And the rest are relatively immaterial housekeeping items. On the amendment side, we have a $94,000 increase to the highway budget, once again for fuel costs. We have an increase in highway labor line, one of the highway labor lines for $96,000. And that actually relates to some Monroe County work that the highway department's been doing. So there is a revenue offset to that expense. We actually come out ahead on that line item. In regard to the sewer fund, there's a $156,000 amendment, and that's to line some sewer main. I believe it's 982 feet of sewer main on Route 250. Kind of feeds into the Hedges pump station. I think isn't that correct, Arts Park? So that will fund some upcoming work there. And then lastly, there is a $300,000 transfer for capital project H0232. The transfer will be coming from general fund, and it's going to fund the highway garage building project. It actually funds the first portion of the MRB contract that was approved a couple of weeks ago. So that's it for those two resolutions.
Actually, three. Okay. Any questions on the transfer resolution, the amendment resolution for the $300,000 capital project transfer for highway? Bill? Any questions? Okay. Okay. I make a motion that we approve the 2022 budget transfers as presented by the Director of Finance.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lynn?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
I make a motion to approve the 2022 budget amendments as presented by the Director of Finance.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lynn?
Aye.
And had I been thinking this through, I would have changed the order of this, so we get into some other highway stuff later, but I make a motion to approve the transfer of the $300,000 from the general townwide fund to capital project H0232 proposed highway building.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lynn?
Aye.
Well, we're going to stick with Paul on this one. I got a kick out of this one because I think just by the name of it, did it cause you some ocular art? Is that an old time when you first saw it?
No, adjective. I'm just trying to get some detail, and it is adjective. Actually, Briaski is the best thing for that.
Is
Yes.
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 Briaski
Although if
is
your
adjective?
stomach is too full, that's not
Well,
necessary.
right. So it's just looking for some clarification, and Paul actually did that very promptly, so it's good.
And Diana, if you're going to comment, you're going to have to get up on the podium with death. Terror, that's what it's called. But Paul, if you could explain what this is, it's a little bit more benign than I think we.
Yeah, every few years, I think we did this maybe 6 or 7 years ago from when I found out, but the town has a telecommunications and a utility expense audit done by a firm of their choice. So this is to approve the town supervisor to sign an agreement with Terrain Banks, who was used previously, to do such work. So basically, the cost for Troy Banks is going to be 35% of whatever they identify as a recovery, and 35% of cost savings for the first year, the next 12 months. And I did compare it to another firm. The firm is called Spyglass, and they had a similar deal, but their costs were 50%. So we'll see how it goes with Troy Banks. We've used them in the past. There's no cost unless they recover something.
It's a contingency deal. If they find $1 billion, we get 35%.
That's correct.
If they find nothing,
You get nothing.
we get nothing. Any questions? And I make a motion.
I would move that we
Oh,
authorize
that's
the
right.
town supervisor to sign an agreement with Troy Banks Inc. to conduct an audit of the town's telecommunications and water/sewer utility service accounts.
Second.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lynn? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Paul, I'm gonna let you explain this one too.
Okay, for the Webster Today contract?
Yes.
Yes. For the past, is it about 2 years now, Tom?
Started at the end of 20,
Yeah.
so they did full year 21, full year 22.
We've been using two separate entities actually to put together the Webster Today magazine. One does a lot of the layout and keeps us on task with the various deadlines to get the magazine issued. And we have another individual that helps us sell advertising, basically just kind of with the whole concept behind the magazine. So both individuals combined to produce a very nice product. This is considered professional service, so it's not required to be bid. It is rather unique what they do. So this just authorizes the town supervisor to sign the contract.
And Paul, if memory serves me, I mean, Webster Today is the new Town Times.
Correct.
The Town Times in 2019 and prior, about a $42,000 budget item for 3 mailings. 3 were done a year.
Yes.
The Webster Today, we've kept the budget flat. It's still at the same $42,000 or $43,000 it has been, and because of the way they have configured it, they're doing 4 mailings a year. So we've increased distribution by 1 and kept costs flat.
That's right.
So, any questions? Any more?
I would move that we authorize the town supervisor to sign the Webster Today 2023 contract.
Second. Councilwoman Cosarelli?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye. Councilman Cato?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. All right, next, like I said, the highway, proposed highway project, it's not getting the same, what did I say, the Joe DiMaggio hitting streak that the sewer project got back in 21 with 13, 14 board meetings in a row where he addressed it. But we have, Pat Stevens is here tonight, our highway superintendent. This has touched 6 board meetings since you first rolled out the July 13th workshop where you presented the current state of affairs. So we've gone through workshop presentations, there's been various resolutions to solicit bids for the design engineer that I think MRB ultimately was done. We did on September 1st do a resolution to solicit bids for construction management. And so I'm going to hand the baton, whether it's Mary or whether it's Bill or whether it's Pat, to explain what this resolution is.
So I'll take this one. Yeah, we've been here a few times. We're going to be here a lot more in the next few months, going through some of the process that we started with MRB. That you'll be, the first step will actually be tonight. But in regards to the construction management services contracts, the first thing I'll do is just sort of give an overview of what this is, because when you see construction management services, a lot of people ask, you're not under construction, what do you need construction management services for? This time, we're still in the design phase, we're still working through some of the things. So there's several sections of construction management services. One of them is pre-construction. So in the pre-construction phase, companies that do construction management have the best information, oftentimes the best insight on ways to phase the project, ways to organize contracts, organize specifications, to advise on value engineering that can save money, and then ultimately gives a smoother transition into the construction phase. So bringing on a construction management firm prior to construction is actually very beneficial in a lot of ways to the project. On this one, we plan to utilize them for all of those things, including cost estimates, as we move closer to this, to try to really nail down the actual cost of this and do phasing to make sure we're as efficient as possible and as cost effective as possible to get the building that we need to replace ours. The specific skill set that a construction management company offers, we feel is very critical and key to really making that the best number and the best project that it can be. Design firms are excellent, they do have a lot of experience, but they don't always have the most experience with actual construction time issues, challenges, things like that. So we really wanted to bring in a professional that deals constantly, essentially, several projects going at any given time, who could help advise us on strategies and different things prior to construction, prior to the bid, and during the design phase. They actually have input on portions of the design that might be able to be made more efficient or phased differently to ease the upfront cost of our facility. So that's the reason for the construction management services contract at this time. Beyond that, we solicited 3 proposals from local construction management firms. We evaluated them using a scoring rubric that we've used for other projects here in town that we feel has been effective. After the review of those with myself, Bill Abbott, and Mary Harrington, we had a candidate that stood out as being highly organized, having a very specific goal approach to it. We had some experience with this particular candidate, and we felt that the proposal that they put forward in combination with the value of the contract was the best way to move forward. So that's why we are recommending tonight a resolution for the supervisor to sign the contract with Campus Construction for the dollar amount I don't have right in front of me, but the $98,000 and change. That's the overview.
I'd say any questions, Bill, you wouldn't have questions, you had comments, because you were part of the team that basically vetted these. It was a good process, it looked like.
Yeah, we went through all of the rubrics, and the numbers came out without doubt that this firm would be the one to choose.
Any questions?
No, it's a great idea.
Ready?
No, it was if on cue, I was actually writing a note to Bill, and it said, how was campus chosen? Did we do RFPs? And not 3 seconds after that, got explained. It was, so thank you for that, appreciate it. And I have been part of some of those evaluations of RFPs with the rubric process, and I just think it works.
Hey, did you mind doing the resolution?
I would move to award the construction management professional services contract to Campus Construction Management for the highway facility project, designed through bidding phases not to exceed $98,545, and to allow the supervisor to sign said contract.
Second.
Councilwoman Kelly?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill? Councilwoman Wynn? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Along the lines of the proposed new highway facility project is the next resolution. Mary, would you be best, or Josh, would you?
I'll take this one.
Okay.
So our consultant, MRB, completed the full environmental assessment form, part 1, which I reviewed and find to be accurate. So at this point, we are doing a resolution tonight to declare our intent as the town board to be lead agency on seeker. And then that will then prompt a 30-day coordinated review with other agencies. And then following the 30-day review, we will be able to declare lead agency as long as there's no other agencies interested, which will then let us follow into the determination of significance. So this is just part 1 of the seeker process.
All right. Any questions? I make a motion of the Webster Town Board establishing the town board as lead agency under the seeker for the highway facility project and begin the 30-day coordinated review process.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye.
You know, the next one is Barb downtown? Okay. Barb and Scott and Dolly, you guys have culminating about a 28-month project. Barbara really did, yeah, and the department heads and everybody else. And before I read this resolution, it was such a global project, and we even had the code book. That's how big the code book is. All right, and it's big. Luckily, we were getting rid of most of those, and it's mostly online. People like to look at it on their laptops and things during the planning board, zoning board, but meetings. It was a global project. I would be, I don't want to have, be perceived as things falling on deaf ears. Public hearing back on the 6th of October about this. The only comments that were made were about section 220, the green space program, Charlie.
Yeah, 220, yeah.
The state discontinued.
152, I think it was.
Yeah. And we had at the time, a dozen years ago, when the state discontinued, maybe 25 properties that were in it. And by design, they were allowed, if they were in it for 10, 15, 20 years, they didn't just stop being in it. They got to finish
We
their...
discontinued any new additions to the program or the
Right.
contracts. Obviously, those contracts that are still in existence will continue until they sunset. The last one, I believe, in 2025.
I think it's down to 8 properties or something. I don't know. But, so like I said, I've heard everybody that was on the 6th here about the green space aspect of this. I heard what was said tonight. Gail, what you said really resonated with me is that, you know, to be able to reference a code as you have 5, 6, 8 years left in it, if the code portion goes away, Charlie, I don't think that would be a problem. Like Donna has already got those slotted for, at our assessor for.
No, if it's still in the code, obviously you can make reference to it. It probably is not a bad idea, because if somebody who is in the program seeks to develop the property, the codes would still apply, because there are provisions that deal with penalties and taxes, and that's right in the code. So there's still
we're removing that part of the code that pertains.
I guess I was of the impression we were not. That was not the case. It's still going to be in, right? No, I don't think we're removing it. I think maybe there's a misconception that we are somehow, I don't know, taking the program away. The program ended 2007. It was a long time ago, 2010 or whatever it was. But we had a lot of discussion at the time. But in any event, it's still, there's not a problem with the language as is remaining in the code.
Okay.
And it still would be applicable as long as there's one property still under that program.
Right. And I'll follow up with Donna just to make sure, because I know it's down to single digits properties that are left, and some of them have 2 years left, some of them have 5 years left. There's not many years left because it went away. So, all right. Well, with that being said, does any of the board members have any questions before we do this resolution? Okay. Well, I make a motion to authorize the enactment of local law 3 to provide for the codification of the local laws, ordinances, and certain resolutions of the town of Webster into a municipal code to be designated the code of the town of Webster.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman McCollum? Aye. Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
All right, that ends phase 1. Now we move into phase 2 of all the things that Josh, you and Jim Montgomery are coming to the board in the next couple of months with proposed new codes, the comp plan, various things for green space that can be utilized now that the state program that Gail you're in was discontinued years ago. We're on to phase 2. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on 10 and 11 as to what they are? Somewhat housekeeping at the end of the year. I take it Pat and Mary, Pat, you worked on this?
And Mary.
Okay.
Mary worked through a lot of it just because These have to do with development, new development, extension of roads. It's not always new, sometimes it's an extension of housing tract that's been going in for a long time. When they reach a certain point where there are residents living on them, and then eventually once the construction is to a completed point, which sometimes they don't do it until there's a certain build out of houses so they don't damage the roadways before they turn them over. Once they get to that point, we take dedication of them officially on the construction phase on the water maintenance program. So because DPW handles the majority of the construction related items as they come and go, they have a good feel for what developments are at what stage, so coordinate with their department. And then they do some of the final review of what's there. Sometimes there's repairs that need to be made before we take dedication and things of that nature. But collaboratively develop this list, and that's what feels appropriate for this year, given the mistakes of these roadways.
Hey, Dolly, for our meeting, and kind of do a check with the resolution everyone. I'd love to go back and see the previous temporary dedications. They roll, are these now permanent? Temporaries rolled into permanent. Ultimately, the temporary would ultimately end up being a permanent.
I did go back and look at the last 4 years. So everything that's been temporarily dedicated in the last 4 years has either been temporary dedicated, because it seems like that's a 1 year dedication, and then, or it's been permanently dedicated.
Beautiful. Made our night, didn't it? All right. Okay. Well, any other questions, comments, or I'll just rattle these. Make a motion to accept temporary dedication of the following roads within the town of Webster. Grand Meadows, approximately 1,000 feet from section 4 to Pine Lakes Trail. Quail Creek Trail, approximately 1,274 feet from Grand Meadows Way to Pine Lakes. Creek's Edge Drive, approximately 855 feet from section 1 to Lake Road. Coastal View Drive, approximately 990 feet from section 4 to the Hammerhead. Lake Point Drive, approximately 398 feet from Lake Point's Estates subdivision to the cul-de-sac. Alyssa Way, approximately 729 feet from Anna Circle to Allison Lane. And Allison Lane from Alyssa Way to Salt Road.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Conley? Aye. Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye.
All right, and then make a motion to accept permanent dedication of the following roads within the town of Webster. Woodsview Drive, approximately 355 feet from Woodsview Drive to the cul-de-sac. Shallow Brook Terrace, approximately 600 feet from section 3 to the turnaround. And Shallow Brook Terrace, approximately 430 feet from section 4 to the cul-de-sac.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Conley?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye.
Is this yours, Dolly, or Pat's?
The request sent to me from the Monroe County Department of Transportation.
Okay.
It's really Monroe County, because it's at the intersection of a county road, and our understanding had the signage in that, at that intersection. But I didn't have any issues with the proposing, so.
Any questions? We make a motion to consent to the placement of a traffic control device by the Monroe County Department of Transportation pursuant to authority granted by section 1651 and 1652A of the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law at the following location. Eastbound stop sign, the location is Allison Lane and Salt Road.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Conley?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Is the next one happening, or is the applicant here?
No, the applicant isn't here, but I can certainly speak to this one.
Okay.
The two residents that live at 273 Eastham Court approached the town about installing a decorative metal fence. It just so happens that they have a 20-foot drainage easement in the rear of their yard. I believe Pat Stevens went out and met with them, evaluated the situation, and has no issue with the placement of this fence within the easement. It is a 4-foot tall black metal fence that's decorative, mostly transparent, and it does comply with the code. They're just seeking a license agreement to place a portion of the fence within the town's drainage easement.
It's correct, that I did review the property, took a look at it. The 20-foot easement in that area is heavily vegetated with various decorative plants and different things, and it would primarily be used as access to a stormwater facility in the area. There's an access within 2 houses of this house that could be utilized instead, so it wouldn't be cost effective for us to do the amount of work required to utilize this portion of the easement unless it's in a state of emergency. Luckily, having a license agreement in place allows us to do that if we need to, but it's highly likely, which is why I was in favor of establishing an agreement.
Usually when we do these, there's that aftermath where Charlie, you kind of give all the
Yeah, I'll take,
instructions.
I have the contact information, so they understand it, right, Josh?
Yes. So you're okay that they're not here?
Yeah, I'll take care of it. It's not real bad.
Bill, anything on this? Larry?
No.
Okay. I make a motion to approve a license agreement at 273 East Hammond Court to allow the installation of a fence in the town of Webster's drainage easement.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye. Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly? Aye. Councilman Allen?
Aye.
Charlie, because I don't think the county attorney has gotten back to you with the amendment of MO-78?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue. I thought maybe it was something because of how the outlook system works. We can cross emails and things, and maybe somebody missed
Right.
it. Apparently, none of us have received the amended IMA, including the language from the letter of October 7th, so. And also from our understanding that the county is going to be passing a resolution to incorporate this on the 15th.
Yeah.
Next week, so, or 2 weeks from now, so might as well wait.
I think if we table it and do it at the workshop on the 10th, we're not holding up the county, but that gives us 7 days for you and the county attorney. Because I appreciate Mr. Garland's letter here, but it's got to be in the IMA format.
I did, as you know, I copied you when I did reach out to her. I don't know, email her today, as a matter of fact, so.
I don't know if the board has any questions or comments, because I am going to make a motion to table this, but certainly because we'll try to bring it back to 10. You can ask for any questions then, or you can ask now. No? All right. I make a motion that we table a resolution to amend the intermunicipal agreement with the county road ready project MO-78.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye. Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly? Aye. Councilman Allen?
Aye.
The next one, she didn't come tonight, did she? She's probably tired of coming to board meetings, Josh.
Yeah, probably. I could just give a brief explanation of this item. So as some of the board members may remember, there was an application that came before you earlier in October regarding a proposal to convert an existing office facility at 1085 Gravel Road to a kennel facility, which requires a special use permit in the MC district. The board considered that request and then referred it on to the planning board for site plan review, which they are scheduled to take place next week. So this is basically a procedural action to set a public hearing associated with the special use permit, and it's proposed to take place on December 1st, and to be advertised in the November 16th edition of the Webster Herald.
Any questions on this? What is her last name?
Amy Holtz.
Ms. Holtz was here on the 6th. She was the planning board on the 18th, the zoning board of appeals on the 25th, so she's making the rounds. Anyway, John, I know you decided on the 6th to abstain because you work in that building. I don't know.
I work for the owner of the building, so I will be abstaining for that.
Okay. I didn't know because it's, well, anyway. I'm going to make a motion to schedule a public hearing for December 1st, 2022 regarding an application for a special use permit associated with Rough Day Dog Resort at 1085 Gravel Road to be advertised in Wednesday, November 16th edition of the Webster Herald.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Abstain.
Councilwoman Wood?
Art, I'm going to hand the baton to you on this one. I know on September 15th, we did a resolution that had Costage as the engineer on this.
No, not on this one.
Really? Well, why don't you explain this? I have my records.
You're speaking of Linda Lane and Ware Road. So this one, we had a group of residents from San Ron Drive and Raphael Drive petition the sewer department to investigate gravity sewers in their area. We then held an informational meeting to explain the process to them. At the conclusion of that, we took a vote. The vote was greater than 50% to move forward to ask the town to create an RFP for engineering services to gain initial design concepts and costs, which at that point will take back to the residents for review and to vote again to see if they would like to move forward.
You're right, Art, it was legislative. Does the board have any questions on this?
No.
This is approximately 3,500 feet of main line and 53 parcels.
Okay. We're going to make a motion to authorize the sewer department to release an RFP to hire an engineering firm to obtain design and cost estimate for San Ron Drive and Raphael Drive service areas to be named West Webster Sewer Project.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill? Councilwoman Wood?
All right, the last two items of the night are somewhat tied together. I will say that the history on this is a workshop presentation on our current courthouse roof and insulation. All that was done on August 11th. On October 6th, we actually did a resolution to hire the outside roof contractor. And I think these two resolutions, which I handed the time to you, Mary, on this. And we're kind of, it's interesting, we're doing this tonight. Wait a minute. Well, so you're doing the,
You asked me to update the slideshow.
so we're not doing that November 10th.
No, we're doing them tonight, but I wanted to give an update on the
Perfect.
project.
Shoot away.
Okay. So this is a abbreviated version of the slideshow we did before. Just to refresh everyone's memory, the interior is doing a 3-inch closed cell spray foam application, and the exterior is the drip edge and waterproof measures. So the cost for the interior is about $70,000, and the exterior is about $9,000. So we reached out to a lot of vendors for this effort. The exterior, we solicited prices from 5 vendors, and we ended up getting 3 quotes. For the interior spray foam application, we were in touch with 5 vendors, and I will give Derek a lot of credit. He has been reaching out to them every single week for about 2 months, and unfortunately only one was interested in the project. And then there's another component that kind of evolved as we talked to spray foam contractors, is that they aren't in the demolition business, so we had to get a proposal to take the existing drywall down within the courthouse. And then future is the remediation needs due to the water that's already come into the building. And we got a quote for $15,000 for that in the past, but it will also be dependent on what's found once they start opening things up. And then all of the refinishing after these efforts are done. So when we presented before, we were hoping to get the interior and exterior correctives done by the end of the year. So we are still working to schedule the interior, we're aiming for end of November, early December to be as little, to give the courts as little disruption as possible. And then the exterior work, they are under contract and they're scheduled to be here in about a week and a half.
Can you repeat what you just said? Who's scheduled to be here next week?
Leo J. Rock. So to go over the costs, I highlighted in orange things that have increased since the first presentation. So the demolition, we got a quote from Environmental Consulting Group, which is a Minor County term contractor. They specialize in demolition and abatement. So their proposal includes all of the drywall demolition and providing tunnels to either side of the building so that court can function in the court, in the boardroom, and you can get access to the clerks throughout the day if you have to come in and pay a fine or something like that. And then the spray foam insulation, in talking to contractors, our original quote was just to spray foam the underside of the roof, and we've expanded that scope some to also do the upper, the vertical sections that are between like the height of this ceiling and where the metal roof is. And then the exterior was a little bit less expensive than we expected, and then in yellow are the two outstanding portions of the project, the remediation and the interior refinishing. So where we were in a little bit under $100,000 in our budget estimate before, we're now over 100, we're around 125. So that is the update on the work being done to the courthouse. So there's two resolutions. The first one is to approve a contract with Environmental Consulting Group to come and do the demolition work, and then that to follow with MIG Building Solutions to do the spray foam application.
And the first one is, that's the county's contractor. Is that correct? Marion Hall?
Yes, it's a term contract that they solicit folks for every so often, every few years, and then they renew it.
We're piggybacking on that contract.
You know, hey, I'll open it up to questions from the board. Layman terms, it's November 3rd, and we gotta get this thing fixed. Because if we get into January and we have another weather-related event, we're gonna have a third year in a row of leak. Sorry about that. Any questions?
No, my only concern is the exterior roof, getting the Leo J. Roth locking the date and a hold to that date. And if they are unwilling or can't do that within the next week, I think we may have to have a discussion with respect to number 2 for the bid cycle. Because as Tom said, we can't roll into December or January without that being done.
They're supposed to be here mid-November. Yeah. Yeah, so I've talked to them a couple times on the phone about the importance of meeting that schedule, so I'll reiterate that tomorrow.
Yeah, they should be able to commit right to a day. I mean, construction companies do it all the time.
Yeah, I believe we have an email with a commitment to the date.
All right, great. That was my only concern.
Any other questions? I guess people that are ready to come through a polyurethane tent to the boardroom soon, but what are you gonna do? Yep. Patty, I'm gonna look to you to do these last two.
I would propose a resolution for the town board to approve a contract with Environmental Consulting Group, ECG, under their term contract with Monroe County to perform interior demolition of the courthouse not to exceed $35,860 and allow the supervisor to sign said contract.
Second.
Councilwoman Feldy?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
And the next is a resolution for the town board to approve a contract with MIG Building Systems LLC to perform closed cell spray foam insulation at the courthouse not to exceed $34,790 and allow the supervisor to sign said contract.
Councilwoman Feldy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. All right, well, it's been a long night, so I'll open it up to the phone. We'll do a quick roundabout, see what everybody has to say. We'll start with Pat. I don't see any leaves coming out of your shirt.
Yes, what I might talk about? Yeah, so we are, say eyeball deep in leaves, yeah, because that's, the way they came down all at once here in the last couple of weeks has caused a pretty massive, pile up out there, and it's been nice weather, so people are getting them out by the roads, which is excellent, we do appreciate that, and we'd like to get them as soon as we can. We will be entering the final zone tomorrow, although it's only on our first pass. We'll be going from zone 4 to zone 5, which can be found on our website. And we are currently working overtime, working until 5:30 in the afternoon, and we will be working this Saturday for a full day to try to get those picked up before they move around too much. So thank everybody for their patience. We are going to get there, and my hope is that with the early drop, we'll be able to complete more passes overall, and our final pass this year will collect a more complete amount of leaves, which we often run into the opposite, where it either snows or there's weather that comes in that doesn't allow us to continue the pickups until the leaves are completely down, and sometimes there's a little bit left over. We've usually not significant, but it can happen. I don't think that'll happen this year, so that it should result in a very complete pickup. But right now, there's a few places that have been waiting for a while. Please bear with us, we will get there. I really hope by the early part of next week, every place has been hit once, and we'll be tearing into the next pass starting on the west side. So that's, other than things we're voting on tonight and progressing the design of the new highway facility, which is extremely exciting for all of our employees to have a facility starting to take shape that we could move forward on and continue to provide all the services, including leaves, that we do in a very efficient and timely manner. It's exciting.
Before, can I interrupt before Arthur goes? Sorry, Arthur. Pat, I just want to add that a resident over on the west side of town commented to me this week that Webster does a great job picking up the leaves. Kudos to the town's DPW. And I said that I would pass that on because it's always nice to know.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
We have been dealing with some pretty significant failures at the plant, mechanical failures. The guys have been working hard to work through those. As Pat well knows very well that we're sending 3 to 4 people out a day, 3 to 4 days a week to try to keep up with the stakeouts from Greenlight and Frontier. It really taxes our small staff. We're keeping up with that. And we are trying as best we can to take advantage of weather like that is to get all of our pump stations prepped for winter, look at our problem mains and problem laterals so we can hopefully get residents through the cold months without any issues.
Great. Josh?
Yeah, we had our public open house meeting for the West Webster Revitalization Plan project last week at Liberty Lodge. Our consultants had several displays up for residents to view and indicate their preferences on a variety of different potential improvements to the area. I was very impressed with the level of attendance. We had about over 70 people come through.
Wow.
In the 2-hour period, so
That's great.
we did get a lot of good feedback, and there's a lot of forward momentum and positivity focused on that area. And I will be giving a presentation to the board with a more thorough update on our efforts at next week's workshop. But anyone that was unable to attend the open house, we put the material on the project webpage. So I urge anyone that's interested to visit that material, and we are still accepting public comments.
Paul?
Since we approved the town budget last week, I actually filed the property tax levy information and 2 certified copies of the budget with Monroe County Real Property Tax Services today. They go through a process where they review and approve all the tax rates before the year ends. I think somewhere in the middle of December, the county legislature approves everything. So that's all in, so that's all squared away.
Great.
And speaking of leaves, the pile in front of my house is about 50 feet long and about 3 to 4 feet high. Might fill one of your trucks.
Very good. Mary?
Yeah, we've been pretty busy with town hall facility projects, so that's not always a good thing. But we kind of revamped our Webster room, our conference room, thanks to Maria. She did a lot of searching for some nice looking and affordable furniture. So we got the table in a couple weeks ago, and we just got all of the chairs assembled today, so it looks a lot different in there. We've also been able to repurpose a back room that was terrifying when I started a year and a half ago, and we've done a lot with our interns to reorganize that, and it's kind of acting as a second internal conference room now. Brayton wants to call it the Sandbar Library, so maybe that's what it will be. And then we're replacing the door down by the police entrance. It's never really properly latched, and the operator for the handicap door has been broken. So we've been waiting to get that door in on order, which is why the handicap operator's been down for so long, but we didn't want to face that work. So that's happening this month. There was an HVAC issue with the IT server, which is important to keep that equipment cool, so we're working through some quotes to get that fixed. The elevator also broke in the last week or two, so we're working on getting that repaired. And then we are close to hiring a GIS technician and construction inspector, hopefully by the end of this year. So we are working with a company to get some new cubicles in the back area. There used to be 2 workspaces, and we're trying to fit in 3. And with the interesting angles in the building, it's been a head scratcher, but I think we figured it out. So everyone's been helping kind of shift around their workspaces and get that sorted out. So, yeah.
Bill?
My department has covered it out good.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Good to be every time. Bill, I hate to say it, I've gotten some feedback that you've been a very good mentor to some of the new department heads, so.
You pick my brain.
You're gonna get a bad
There's not
reputation if you
much
keep
left
that
there,
up,
though.
you know? Yeah. Patty?
I attended the Webster, the Northeast Joint Fire District Fire Department open house on Saturday as part of the trick-or-treat trail. And in speaking with a couple of the firemen, I promised that I would make an announcement at one of our meetings that they are really always searching for volunteers in the community to serve in the fire department. And we are very, very blessed in this town to have volunteer fire departments, because I don't think we want to know what that tax would be if we were full paid departments. So I said that I would get the message out that there are volunteer opportunities. They're certainly talking about possibly pairing up with schools. It's been done in Greece. So they're looking into that, and I said I would be happy to be the conduit between the Webster School District and And then should they come forth with a proposal?
Charlie?
I just want to piggyback on what Josh said about the project. I've even got inquiries myself, contacting people who know me, so there is a lot of interest out there. And especially people who live in the area are very, very interested in the development of it and what's going on. And it's nice to be able to report some progress after many, many years. And not due to our fault, it's just the way it is. It's complicated.
It is complicated.
We have found, hopefully, it's light at the end of the tunnel type of situation.
Well, it was a very complicated situation given the, ownership and the tax applications, but it's nice to see that we have pushed forward and involved the local residents, which clearly would like to see something done in that area. It's sorely needed, so, kudos to everybody that's been involved in pushing this entire process forward, including yourself, Charlie.
Well, I'd say both this administration and the prior administration both were instrumental in not giving up on this.
Right.
And finally finding a way towards getting some resolution. We still have a ways to go.
Sure.
But we are.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be a big step going forward.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. We just picked up the baton from a couple of years ago and just kept going with it. So it started long before I got here. Jenny?
Well, I would like to encourage people to come out and support our locals, library and our museum. And I also attended the trick-or-treat trails on Saturday and volunteered with Elaine at the West Webster Firehouse too. And it's a lot of people, come out and support our community, which is a wonderful thing. And I know this is kind of early, but I'm passionate about my veterans, my men and women, in uniforms that serves our country and our community. Thank you so much for all you do for us. And have a good night.
Jen?
A couple of things. As liaison to our local ambulance, Webster EMS, I once again just want to give acknowledgement and thanks to all the EMTs and the paramedics that they do a job that not many people can do. I know I could never do it, but their dedication and professionalism and everything that they do, we're very, very fortunate to have Webster EMS, and I will continue, as I'm sure the rest of this board will continue to support them going forward. With respect to the trick-or-treat trail, the celebration they had in the village, it's always a fantastic day. And I'm always, every year, I'm so impressed with the costumes at Performance Hobbies. I really am. It's just fantastic. But I never see any pictures of them in the local paper for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but they go above and beyond. They really do. That's all I have.
So the town is no longer collecting school taxes. We stopped on October 31st. However, taxpayers still could submit payments to the treasurer's office until November 18th.
Well, gang, we'll get you out of here and we'll get you home. This meeting is adjourned.
Pat, when was the last day or period of active? I know you said you're starting your second pass tomorrow, Howard.
Well, the last day will be Paul.
How long?
So Paul will call you.
They're going to sit there until
They're going to sit there till then.
You're calling I mean, it is amazing. I live in a 3 block. We usually have 3 or 4 days where our veterans, because everything did happen all of a sudden.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, no, luckily it's been fairly dry. Oh, no, I've been using my way.
You know, when the weather's good, it's going to go around.
And did your table say well?
I know a couple of times you get really close.
Yeah.
Oh, that's because and people get really bitching.